Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world, with very little to distress or vex her.
As the second daughter of a most affectionate and indulgent father, as a consequence of her sister Isabella's marriage, she had been the mistress of his home from a very early period. Her mother had died too long ago for her to have more than an indistinct remembrance of her caresses. But as governess, an excellent lady was to supply her place, and made the part of a mother perfectly.
16 years had Miss Taylor been in Mr. Woodhouse's family, less as a governess than as a friend, very fond of both daughters, but particularly of Emma.
The real evils, indeed, of Emma's situation were the power of having rather too much her own way, and a disposition to think a little too well of herself. Sorrow came. Miss Taylor married. And it was on the wedding day of this very dear friend that Emma first sat with her father. With her father? With her father.
Poor Miss Taylor, I wish she were here again. What a pity it is. Mr. Weston never thought of her.
I cannot agree with you, Papa. You know I cannot. Mr. Weston is such a good-humoured, agreeable man that he thoroughly deserves a good wife. And he would not have had Miss Taylor live with us forever when she might have a house of her own.
A house of her own? But my dear girl, where is the advantage of a house of her own? This is 3 times as large.
How often we shall be going to see them. As they coming to see us, we shall always be meeting.
But my dear, Randall's is such a distance. How am I to get so far? I could not walk half so far.
Oh, nobody thought of your walking, Papa. We must go in the carriage, to be sure.
Oh, the carriage. But where are the 4 horses to be while we are paying our visit?
They are to be put into Mr. Weston's stables, Papa.
Mr. Knightley.
Robert, oh,
Mr. Knightley, a sensible man of about 7 or 8 and 30, was an old and intimate friend of the family. He lived about an hour from Highbury and was a frequent visitor and always welcome.
It is very nice for you to call upon us at this late hour, Mr. Knightley. I'm afraid you must have had a shocking walk.
Well, not at all. It is a beautiful moonlit night, and so mild that I must draw back from your great fire.
But you must have found it very damp and dirty. I wish you may not catch a cold.
Dirty, sir? Look at my shoes. Not a speck on them.
Well, that is quite surprising, for we have had a vast deal of rain here. I wanted them to put off the wedding.
By the by, I have no wish to joy. I hope that it all went off tolerably well. How did you all behave? Who cried most?
Poor Miss Taylor. It is a sad business.
Every friend of Miss Taylor must be glad to have her so happily married.
I made the match, 4 years ago. And when success has blessed me in this instance, Papa, you cannot think that I shall leave off matchmaking.
Well, I do not know what you mean by success. Success supposes endeavour. You made a lucky guess, and that is all that can be said in this instance.
And have you never known the pleasure and the triumph of a lucky guess? If I had not promoted Mr. Weston's visits here, and smoothed many little matters, and given many little encouragement, it might not have come to anything at all.
A straightforward, open-hearted man like Weston and a rational, unaffected woman like Miss Taylor may be safely left to manage their own concerns. You are more likely to have done harm to yourself than good to them by interference.
Emma can never think of Others when herself, when she can do good to others. But pray, my dear, do not make any more matches. They are silly things and break up one's family circle grievously.
Oh, only one more, Papa. Only for Mr. Elton. Oh, poor Mr. Elton. There's nobody in Highbury who deserves him, and he has been here a whole year.
Mr. Elton is a very pretty young man, to be sure, and a very good young man. I have a great regard for him, but if you want to show him any attention, my dear, invite him to come and dine with us some day. That would be a much better thing.
I agree with you entirely that it will be a much better thing. Invite him to dinner, Emma, and help him to the best of the fish and the chicken, but leave him to choose his own wife. Depend upon it, a man of 6 and 20 can take care of himself.
Mr. Elton was reckoned to be very handsome, though not by her. There being a want of elegance of feature that she could not dispense with, but the girl who could be gratified by Robert Martin's riding about the county to get walnuts for her might very well be conquered by Mr. Elton.
Miss Woodhouse! Miss Woodhouse!
Harriet!
He has sent me a letter.
Already?
It is a proposal of marriage.
Oh, Harriet!
From Mr. Martin. Who would have thought it?
Who would have thought it?
Will you read the letter? Pray do.
Emma was not sorry to be pressed. She read and was surprised.
It was a short letter, but it expressed good sense, warm attachment, even delicacy of feeling. Well, Miss Woodhouse, is it a good letter or is it too short?
A very good letter, Harriet. But so good a letter that, everything considered, I think one of his sisters must have helped him, for it is much better written than I had expected.
Well, and what shall I do?
What shall you do? Well, you must answer it, of course.
What shall I say?
Your meaning must be unequivocal.
You think that I ought to refuse him?
Ought to refuse him? Oh, my dear Harriet, I lay it down as a general rule that if a woman doubts as to whether she should accept a man or not, she certainly ought to refuse him.
Do you think that I'd better say no?
If you prefer Mr. Martin to every other person, does anybody else occur to you under such a definition? Oh, you blush, Harriet. At this moment, whom are you thinking of?
Miss Woodhouse, I have now quite determined, that is, I have really almost made up my mind to refuse Mr. Martin. Do you think I'm right?
Perfectly. Perfectly right. A woman is not to marry a man merely because she's asked. Oh.
Harriet slept at Hartfield that night.
Emma judged it best in every respect, safest and kindest, to keep her with them for a while.
Although not all the time.
Mr. Knight.
Emma.
And curtain down.
That's not one continuous